Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Passing Through podcast. I am coming to you this time from northern Spain, a few hours outside of Barcelona. We've arrived here after our journey from northern Italy, down through southern Italy, through the south of France, on an incredibly beautiful, glorious journey. And I want to tell you about the start of it. I won't have time to tell you all of it, but I want to tell you about a little mishap that we had up in the Italian Alps on our way down. Because it's always been a dream of mine to go to the Alps. I don't know when the dream came to me, probably at some point many years ago when I saw some beautiful influencer on Instagram posing in yoga pants in front of some beautiful mountain range in the Alps. But ever since then, deep in my heart, there has been an insatiable yearning to go to this beautiful place. And when I realized how close we were to the Alps at the Italian eco-village that we were staying at, I did all I could to convince Asha to accompany me on this journey and make a poor man's dream come true. So I was able to convince her, and I booked a car, I booked an Airbnb, I started carving out little pockets of hiking to do and sights to see, and figuring out which roads are closed in the winter and which ones are open. And I did all I could to make this a reality. But as I've found out on this journey, living in a van teaches you a few things. All the best plans are easily laid to waste by nature's plans. I was thinking, oh my God, it's going to be so wonderful. It's going to be so great. I can't wait to do it. And then I found out that it's not all sprinkled sugar, sleds, and snow angels. We almost fucking died. We literally almost fucking died on the top of a mountain range. And for a little preamble, for a little foreshadowing, I would just ask you, dear listeners, have you ever tried driving up the Alps in a van with summer tires in winter? Steep mountain altitudes, painted in sloping sheets of snow and ice. Have you ever had the pleasure of driving a front-wheel drive vehicle up such exquisite terrain? Well, allow me to tell you a bit about it. So initially I had planned to get a rental car because I had read numerous accounts of people telling me, do not go up there in a vehicle with summer tires on it. Your stopping power is orders of magnitude shittier. You will get stuck in the snow. You can't brake. You're going to be slipping on everything. It's going to be a nightmare. Just get a rental, get winter tires on it, and be good. Don't even worry about it. Unfortunately, rental agencies in northern Italy in the winter somehow don't guarantee winter tires on a rental. If they can't provide winter tires on a rental, they will gladly charge you 20 euros or more to give you a pair of snow chains. Now, some of you might ask, what the fuck are snow chains? I've never even heard of that. Is that something that the Fred Flintstone equivalent of a Stone Age trucker would put on their wheels to prevent them from sliding down a mountain? And basically, yes, that is exactly what it is. So they are super finicky to put on. Generally, your hands are numb and icy, and you need your fingers exposed to lock the chains together, loop them around the wheel. You're down on your hands and knees in the ice. My fingers were frostbitten. I almost lost them to gangrene in the 5 minutes that it took to attach them. You know, I didn't want to deal with that. Not only because of the things that I'm describing here, but also because you can't travel more than 30 kilometers per hour while they're attached to your wheels. And they can only be attached to the wheel while you're in snow or ice. And if you aren't, and you're driving on asphalt, they could damage the chains, they could break off, they could damage the wheels. If they do snap off and they get stuck under your wheel, I guess it could damage the components under your car. It could damage the road. So ultimately, it was just such a huge hassle, and I wanted to avoid it at all costs. But through a series of unfortunate events, I found myself purchasing a pair of snow chains for our van to take up to the Alps. This was the situation I really wanted to avoid because I know our vehicle is long, it's kind of weak, it has summer tires on it, and I just envisioned us being in the middle of nowhere on a mountain, or worse, in traffic on a mountain, trying to make hairpin turns up switchbacks in the ice and snow and losing control of the vehicle on a perilous precipice somewhere up on some alarming altitude. And this was the reason that I wanted a rental. This was the reason that I wanted winter tires, and I wanted everything just to be easy. But life had other plans. So flash forward to Asha and I being up in just incredibly beautiful mountains, covered in snow, winding up mountainous roads in beautiful Italian countryside and villages, mountains towering over us. I was giddy. I was like a little schoolgirl. I was laughing. I was clapping my hands together. I was rubbing them like this. Let's see if you can hear this. I was just going, I was going crazy up there. This was a dream of mine for so long. And so that we were actually doing it and the weather was smiling on us. It was like summertime. It was warm. It was sunny. There were giant birds up in the sky. It was beautiful. So we were driving up to a place that had been recommended to us by a local, by an Italian friend of ours who we met at the eco village who lived about an hour from the Alps. And he said, hey, go here. None of the tourists go here. It's before the UNESCO heritage site. You'll be up there. You'll see all of the Alps. It's incredible. There's a refugio there. I don't know if the refugio will be open. The season might be over, but maybe. I would check it out. It's only a 40-minute hike. It's great. So we said, sure, let's do it. That was our first stop on the way up. And everything was going great. We were both so excited. The novelty and spontaneity and the adventure of the whole thing. It was like a proper road trip. So we were just in awe of everything that we were seeing. And everything was going great up until we got to a patch of snow on this deserted mountainous road. And the car got stuck. Now, Asha was driving the vehicle, and there was a reason for this. There's a certain maneuver that you have to learn how to do when you drive a manual transmission. And it's specifically for these situations. When you're on a steep slope, when there is a high grade that your vehicle is on where it isn't flat, and you come to a stop, either because of traffic, a stoplight, a stop sign, something in the road, whatever it is, if you have to stop and then start your vehicle again, there's a way to do it where you engage the emergency brake and then you start to engage the clutch in first gear. And once it starts to pull and the car is moving forward, you disengage the emergency brake and you go forward. This prevents you from rolling backwards into, let's say, another vehicle or some kind of obstruction like a boulder or a parked car or a person who might be crossing in the crosswalk behind you. Or, in our case, it might prevent you from, say, rolling backwards off of a mountain So the car got stuck and Asha was driving. So we were okay with this because she knows how to start. So she did the maneuver. This maneuver, I am dog shit at. I am terrible at it. When I try to do it, it's comical. It's embarrassing. I'm in fear of my life that I'm going to smash into someone behind me or kill an old lady who's walking in the crosswalk. So rather than practice this and become competent at it, I just allow Asha to do it all the time so I can develop a very unhealthy dependency on her to take care of me in these situations. So when it happened, I was relieved because it was her dealing with the problem and not me. Unfortunately, what happened here was that we were in the ice and snow without snow chains on, and we had summer tires on our car. The wheels just spun. The car was starting to turn sideways and fishtail. We were both getting very alarmed, very frightened. And we decided, well, let's just roll the car back a little bit and try to get it to the side where we can maybe start again and maneuver around and turn the car around, because our other alternative was to just go in reverse down the length of the mountain that we had just driven up. And for obvious reasons, this is problematic. Let's say another car comes behind us and wants to go up. The road was too narrow. It wouldn't have been able to get around us, and that car would have had to go reverse as well. So creating reverse traffic down a mountain didn't sound like a good idea, so we were going to try to take another go at it and maybe get around the snow or find a place up ahead to do a K-turn. Whatever the case was, we needed to do this. The sad thing about it was that we were 3 minutes away from our destination. So this was a hell of a time to get blocked. So we get the car to the side of the road, and to our dismay, we find that when we try to start the car from this position, the wheels just spin out again because we are on top of icy, wet, snowy, dead leaves that have fallen off the trees and gathered in the side of the road. So this is bad because now behind us is a boulder that the car is kind of pressed up against, so we can't roll back any further, but nor can we move forward. So we're stuck between a rock and a cold, hard place at this moment. And we didn't really know how to get out of it. So at this point, we just say, okay, let me try to go find a bunch of sticks and debris that I could lodge under the wheel for traction and grip, and maybe we'll be able to go. So after I go around and I collect a whole bunch of stuff to put under the wheels, we try to start the car up again and it just spins out. So this doesn't work. So I go into the back and get some cardboard from the box that the snow chains came in. And so I should also say, some of you might be thinking, you have the snow chains, why don't you put the snow chains on? Well, in this case, we were on a slope, so getting the snow chains on seemed a bit difficult because you have to drive the car a bit once you put the snow chains on to re-secure them. And in every video I had watched on how to install them, it was always on a flat surface. The other problem was that we weren't really on snow at this point. We were on icy leaves. And the way that the wheels were spinning, it seemed that if we tried to put chains on and they weren't attached properly, or even if they were, if the wheels started spinning like it was, the chains would just fly off and destroy the axle or destroy the wheel well or the wheel. I don't know. I just didn't want the chains to get immediately broken and stuck in the car because this would be an even worse nightmare than the one that we were in. So instead of that, I was using cardboard. And the cardboard actually worked, but it was super dangerous. I didn't realize it until after, when I'm half underneath the vehicle and Asha's giving it gas and the wheels are just spinning and my hands are feeding cardboard underneath the wheel and pebbles and twigs and things are getting kicked up into my fucking face. That's when I realized that I was in a dangerous position, but there was nothing else to do. Once we had some traction and we had some grip and we were able to get the car into a sideways position to try to make a turn where there was just enough room to make the turn, or at least that's how it seemed to me. Asha, who was driving the vehicle, was looking at me, shaking her head no, that there is no way that we can make this turn. And she's telling me, are you certain that we can make this turn? And I said, well, I'm not certain. And she's like, can you measure it? And I'm like, I don't know how I can measure it. I don't have measuring tape to calculate, like, do I need a protractor? Is this like this is the kind of math equation that they should give you when you're in like 7th grade and they're giving you these math problems where you have to do calculations. They should say, your van is 3 meters long. You're on a road that is 3.3 meters long. When you rotate, these are the kind of important math questions that they should be teaching us as we're children. Because this could have been a great time for calculus. This could have been an incredible math problem to sit there and go through and try and solve with a proof. If any of you are mathematicians or educators or just love math and you want to write a problem, please do it in the Spotify comments or wherever I don't know if other platforms offer comments, but yeah, I encourage you, get creative, get crazy. But in our case, there was no Pythagorean theorem to get us out of this one. So I just got in the car. I looked at it. I said, it seems good to me. But Asha's like, can you be sure? I'm like, well, I can't be sure. But this was the kind of thing where we had no other choice. We couldn't go up the hill. We had to go down. We couldn't do it in reverse because the car was already sideways. So the only thing we could do was to try to turn it around. For me, this was the kind of thing that I was dreading. This was the exact situation that I wanted to avoid by not taking our car, by having the right tires, by just taking a few precautions to prevent this exact scenario. Because throughout my whole life, I have had recurring nightmares of being in a car and either the brakes don't work, I hit snow, I can't see, P. Diddy comes out and sprays baby oil all over the windshield in a puff of fucking smoke, and I can't see anything, and I go careening over a cliff edge and die. And I've had this dream dozens of times in my life, so this scenario was harrowing for me. And I was trying to be calm, I was trying to be compassionate, I was trying to be considerate, but it was difficult. And I was stressed. I didn't know what to do. I see that Asha was stressed. It was not a good situation, but I was proud of my ability to not devolve into impatient yelling or making the situation worse by getting angry and frustrated at her. And because it was no one's fault. We were just in a situation. She needed my help. I needed hers. We were working good as a team. But in this moment, she was compromised. She was crying at the wheel. She's saying, I don't think I can do this. I don't think there's enough space. And she needed certainty from me, and I couldn't give her certainty. And I felt terrible. I felt helpless in the situation. It was bad. I felt we weren't going to go off the cliff. I was pretty certain of that. The most that would have happened was the car would have gotten stuck again, but this time really close to the edge in a place where we probably would have either had to call a tow truck, the police, a helicopter, fucking Batman. I don't know who we would have to, Ghostbusters. I don't know who we would call to get us out of that one, but we would have been in an even worse situation at that point. But I didn't feel it was a fatal mistake. So I got in the car with her and, we just looked at each other and I said, let's do it. You're good. You have enough space. It feels right to me. Because driving is the kind of thing where you feel it, right? When you're parking a car, you kind of know how much space you have. You feel the vehicle as an extension of yourself. That's how we use cars. They become an appendage almost. And when I was in the car, from an intuitive feeling sense, I knew that there was enough space, that it was going to be fine. Even outside the vehicle, it looked okay, but it was really on the line. It was on the edge. But my experience with the car told me that it was okay. And so we make the turn, and it was okay. And the relief and joy and ecstasy of being unstuck and being safe and having not toppled over the edge of a cliff in the snow on the mountains, all of this was just great. It was a beautiful flood of serotonin, dopamine and norepinephrine just coursing through our veins at that moment. And I think it's hard for you as a listener to understand just how dangerous, uncomfortable, and scary the situation was. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Beetlejuice, not the new one, but the original. There's a point where they go crashing through the side of a bridge and the car is teetering on the edge. And the only thing keeping them in balance is like a little puppy that's on the back of a piece of wood. It's like seesawing. And they're both looking back at each other. They're looking at the dog. They're kind of whispering, please don't move. So they have enough time to climb out of the vehicle and escape the doom that is in store for them. Of course, they don't escape. The dog jumps off and they both die. And then the movie kind of begins. But it felt like that. It felt like we were teetering on the brink of destruction on the top of this mountain. And it was very uncomfortable. And I don't think the story quite does it justice. You kind of had to be there, but it was bad. But then once we got up into the mountains, it was incredible. It's rare that a thing happens that you dream of and then you go and do the thing and it's even better than what you dreamed. And that's what it was up in the Alps. Those mountains were absolutely fucking spectacular. Literally spectacular. Because often that word is used as an exaggeration or an embellishment or like sarcasm sometimes. Because how often do you say the word spectacular and mean it? But in this case, the mountains were ridiculous. It was mind-boggling. It was incredible, these mountains. And the other thing that was really magical about being up in the Alps here is that there's an extended sense of sunrise and sunset because the mountains are all around you and it seems to go on and on for hours. The sun just gets hidden behind one mountain and then pops out of another, or shafts of light are just hitting the mountain faces and they glow. There's this thing called the alpine glow where it looks like the mountains are radioactive, or just they turn these colors that seem impossible. And when you take photos of them, it kind of does it justice, but you have to really be there and see it because it seems like holy, like they are imbued with magical, holy, glowing light. I don't know how else to describe it. We were there at just this perfect time in the Earth's rotation around the sun because winter isn't in full swing yet. So the snow there is just gently dusting the tops of the mountains, having this effect of actually accentuating the contours and the faces of the mountains instead of concealing them. Because, you know, when you have too much snow on the mountain, it's like putting like a mountain of makeup on someone's face where it just covers up all of the contours and makes everything seem a bit unnaturally smooth and polished and perfect. Here it had the opposite effect where you saw every little line and striation and mark, and it was beautiful. I couldn't believe it. I felt high for just the entire time we were up there because there's so many mountains. They're everywhere. You are surrounded by 360 degrees of mountains, always in your face. Just a new mountain is saying hi in every direction you look at. And if it's the same mountain, you're seeing it from a different perspective. So it was really just, I don't think I've ever seen a mountain range as enchanting and magical and just, it was on a different level. Like if you like mountains, it was like crack. It was just mountain after mountain after mountain after mountain. You know, I've been to beautiful mountain ranges. I've been to Patagonia. I've been to Iceland. I've been to Montana. I've been to the national parks in the States. I've seen incredible mountains, but I haven't seen mountains like these. It was just, it was crazy. And so I got to thinking, what is it about these mountains? What's unique about them that just seems so different from other mountains that I've seen? And I discovered that there is actually something very unique about these mountains. And I want to call them by a name that's more fitting now, because there was a time when they were called the Pale Mountains. And I think that name is just much more fitting because it's more poetic, it's more beautiful. It sounds closer to some kind of indigenous name for the mountains, instead of just calling them the Dolomites or the Alps, where they're named after some person who discovered them or who named the mineral that they're mostly composed of. So from this point on, I will call them the Pale Mountains. And this mountain range, when I was up there, I was thinking, how old are these mountains? Like, how old are most mountains? I don't know, but how old are these mountains? Like, if you had to guess, think for a second. How old are the Pale Mountains in the Italian Alps? 1,000,000 years? A few 100,000? 10 million? 50 million? My guess was probably tens of millions of years old. I had no idea. Because when you're getting into numbers that big or times that far gone, it just becomes an inconceivable blur anyway. But when I looked it up, they are somewhere between 250 and 280 million years old. That is a staggering number. And the thing about them that's unique isn't their age. It's about what happened to them. They saw some of the world's most brutal extinction events. You know, they saw the extinction event that we don't even really fully understand how it happened. The one that precedes the extinction event that killed the dinosaurs about 65 million years ago. But the one that they think was probably a meteor or crazy chains of volcanic activity that just wiped out 90% of life on the planet. These mountains were there for that. They precede that event. Because when you go way back in the Earth's history, there was a time when there was just one giant continent called Pangaea. And in time, the continent there was plate tectonics and things happening that shifted and broke the continents apart into the ones that we know today. And their shape changed over time because of continental drift. If I'm remembering my earth science from junior high school correctly, or was it even elementary school? I don't remember where they teach you about this. But they're always kind of changing, which is cool to think about, that even the face of the earth is in flux. It isn't a constant thing that's static, it's dynamic. But these mountains, the Pale Mountains, there was a time when they were completely underwater. Like, that alone is pretty staggering to me, that these things that are jutting out, I guess, kilometers out of the fucking earth were at one point completely submerged underwater and were part of a sea is insane to me. And they weren't just part of a sea, they were also engulfed in a miasma. I don't even know if that's the correct usage of that word, but it came to me, of volcanic eruption and lava spread and just things that were changing their face, changing the composition of the rock, changing the sediments that were collecting, because they were a coral reef at a point. It's crazy. So they were mountains at one point. They sunk under and became an ocean. They became a coral reef. And then when the African continent and the European continent collided, they pushed back up out of the sea and became mountains once more. The stately, beautiful, picturesque mountains that you'll see if you do a Google image search for the Pale Mountains or the Dolomites or the Italian Alps. They're just staggeringly beautiful mountains. And they have this history that's unique for mountains, as far as I understand. So they've been around to see so much happen on Earth. And even in the human times, I didn't know this about this region, but during World War I, some of the fiercest, most terrible trench warfare happened up in the Italian Alps in the Pale Mountains. I was reading that of the 150,000 soldiers that died in those mountains, only about 50,000 of them died in battle. That that is uncanny, that is wild, that the mountains were so unforgiving, that more people died to frostbite, gangrene, avalanches, illnesses because of the cold, just freezing to death, getting lost, sliding down a mountain. It's such a beautiful place for man to be perpetrating such ugly acts. When I think about it, it's terrible to be in a place that beautiful and just be slaughtering your fellow humans, or, blowing up parts of the mountain with bombs and munitions and causing avalanches, killing people and changing the rock faces just for destruction, needless war, and for what? So when I was driving around that place, it felt, I've used the word enchanted a few times in this podcast, and it really did. And there's been so much life there, and so much death, and so much trauma, and so much beauty, and so much change. It's incredible what's the things that have transpired in that region. And somehow, I don't know, I felt really connected to it. I felt that there was some other dimensionality to it there. And it wasn't just like the crispness of the air or the expansiveness of it. There seemed to be some mountain spirit, some river spirit, some pine spirits. You have such a confluence of things up there. The winding roads, the way the water moves through it, the way that the air and the clouds move through it. It was just so magical. And I'm still kind of reeling about it, and I can't get over it. And I don't want to beat your ears to death with praise of these mountains, but the hikes that we did there and the time we spent there were some of the most fulfilling, rewarding, beautiful times that I've ever spent in nature. And I'm really grateful to have had the chance to go there and be there and see it. And this was something I've always wanted to do. And I hope to return one day. I don't think this was the last time that I'll be there. I feel like you could spend years up in that region and still not see everything. So yeah, I hope to return again. And I just wanted to share a little bit about that experience. After our escape up into the mountains, we drove down the Italian coast. And we went from the crests of stormy, snow-capped mountains to the sunny palm tree seaside in about, a matter of hours. And there's something forbidden about being able to switch climates that quickly. Like it felt wrong. Like it shouldn't be possible to be up in the freezing cold on the top of a mountain. And then like we were literally sitting beside a beach having pizza and a beer and a t-shirt. Like it didn't make sense. And it was so beautiful. Like these little coastal Italian seaside towns, as you're winding through the mountains at beach level, was really, I need to return to all of these places as well, because we're here in the off season. So they're mostly deserted. There were locals, there were people around. We even saw a bunch of bikers dressed up as Santa Claus, just on parade, beeping through the streets. It was actually really funny and really loud. So we saw some cool things, but in summertime is when people come here. So they were really sleepy and closed, and it lent a different kind of beauty and a different kind of cozy atmosphere to the spaces. But yeah, I'll have to return to those as well, because I can imagine in summertime that it is just gorgeous to be there. And then we kept driving. Before we hit France, we slept at a roadside gas station for the night, just in the car. We'd never done that before, so that was an interesting experience. We were sleeping beside truckers, and I have never felt such brotherly affection with truckers. So when we got to France, I had, for the first time, a true, real croissant. Every other croissant in my life that I've ever had was just pretending. This croissant was so good, so fluffy, so buttery, so soft, so tasty, so delicious, that I don't even want to call it a croissant, because it wasn't a croissant at that point anymore. It was It became a croissant. I ate my first croissant. And I know I'm not even saying it right, but I'm closer to saying it right than I was before because that was not a croissant. It was a croissant. It was a croissant. It was a croissant. And I'm still thinking about it. I'm tempted to leave Spain, drive north completely out of the way that we're going, get another one, and then return back down to Granada, where we're headed for Christmas to meet Asha's parents. Anyone who's ever been to France, like I've heard people talk about the croissants. I've heard the French talk about them. And I always said like, yeah, what's so good about it? I don't really get it. Now I get it. Croissant. And now we're in Spain and we'll be here for another couple of days. We're staying at a friend's place, which is off the grid and tucked away, running off of solar. And we've been just pulling out brambles. I thought I was done with brambles for this year, but it turns out I was mistaken. And it's been nice just to tell stories, be cozy and warm by the fire, enjoy just being here in a place where we could visit a friend and slow things down a bit. She actually has a friend visiting, so we get to meet one of her friends, which is nice. We've been playing cards and just, it's been great. So this is like a nice little way to ease into Christmas by going up into the winter wonderland that was the Dolomites, going down and getting a croissant in France after having some delicious pizza on the Italian coast and the Mediterranean, and now being here and eating flan and just enjoying time together before we go and meet the family, and a friend from Berlin will join us. So really, like, I'm starting to feel a little bit like we're reaching the end of the year, and I'm feeling a lot of gratitude, and a lot has happened this year. I have been in a lot of places. I've broken bones. I've, you know, if you've listened to this podcast, you know a lot of things have happened. I've interviewed some heroes of mine. I've learned some songs on the piano. I've made some weird music on this podcast. You know, I've maintained a creative outlet. I've deepened my understanding of community building. I've read so many books. I've met so many people. Like, it's been a great year, and I don't often give myself permission to like celebrate joy. Somehow I've been made to feel that talking about joy or things that I might be happy about is a form of like gloating or humble bragging or something like this, where I'm talking about, oh, so many good things have happened. Oh, it's so great. And I've never liked it. You know, I can be happy for people when they're talking about their own, and somehow it doesn't feel like gloating when they do it, unless it is. You know, sometimes I do get the feeling that someone is gloating, but for me, I always feel somewhat uncomfortable sharing joy or sharing happiness. And I know it's maybe a little bit early for a New Year's resolution, but I'm going to try to incorporate that a little bit more into my life and into this coming year, because I think I have an unhealthy relationship to that, because if I can't talk about joy, if I can't talk about things that have been positive, formative, influential experiences on me, and I could only talk about challenges and sorrows and sadness, this is lopsided. This is imbalanced. So for me, I'm going to start experimenting with talking about things that make me happy and bring me satisfaction and joy. There's actually a Hopi elder prophecy that is on the wall here at my friend's place. And I want to actually read it now to close out. I'll give you an eco tip at the end of this, but I wanted to read this because it was so good, and it even talks a little bit about this. I didn't plan on talking about this in this episode, so it just wove its way in, and I want to read it for you now. So, you have been telling people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour, and there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside yourself for your leader. Then he clasped his hands together, smiled, and said, "This could be a good time. There is a river flowing now, very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. So yeah, I read that and it felt really powerful, not only because it says a phrase in there that I say every single podcast, but because the message seems timely. And I think if we celebrate our joys more and we share more and we struggle together, we're not really struggling because we have each other, we have community. And if we look around in the water and see who is with us, it is cause to celebrate. And maybe if those people on the shore see those people in the water, and they see that they're safe and they're celebrating and that it's okay to let go and just let go of that fear that there could be a way out of this, that there could be a way into the future, and that we have to get ourselves there. There's no leader that's going to get us there. It's us. So yeah, as far as an eco tip here to close out, it's Christmas time. You're going to be giving a lot of gifts. Don't go out and buy wrapping paper and all of these kind of wasteful decorations like tassel and garland and things to put on your tree and leaving lights on all night. Be mindful of how you're using energy right now. Be mindful of the waste that you might be creating. So if you're going to get gifts and you're going to wrap them, maybe use paper that you have lying around. Give it a second use, maybe old newspaper, or maybe don't even wrap them. The tip is basically be mindful of how you're using electricity this holiday season. A quick aside here, actually. The neighboring town to the one I grew up in, there were people who every year would put so many Christmas lights on their house that it would attract people from nearby towns who would come and be outside just looking and taking photos and seeing the spectacle. So they weren't just wasting electricity for some meaningless decoration in front of their house, but people were actually driving to go see it. So think about all those carbon emissions of people just going to see some flashing lights at night. And yeah, I did it too. I know they're beautiful. I know it's fun to look at. I know we're kind of like moths to a flame when we see flashy lights. We want to go see those lights. We want to be there. We like the shimmering, pretty thing. I get it. But maybe this year, think about not doing that. Think about skipping it. Or think about turning the lights off sooner. Think about maybe avoiding the drive over. These kind of things. So yeah, I'm in a cold van here. I could see a little bit of smoke coming out of my mouth when I breathe. So I spent a lot of this year talking about how hot it was in the van. And now I'm going to be talking about how cold it is because the seasons have changed. So in an effort to get back into the warm house by the fire, I'm going to wrap this one up by just saying, be good to one another. Celebrate your joys. Find some joys. They're there. Maybe start a gratitude journal as you go into the holiday season, because the holiday season can be hard. It's cold. It's dark early. It's lonely. It's oppressive, especially if you're away from your family or you don't have family and you see people celebrating and there's this sense of togetherness and people spending time with one another. It can be hard. So be easy. Be gentle on yourselves. Find those things to be grateful for, to give you that, to kind of feed your soul and give yourself some sustenance and nourishment there. I hope to have one more, maybe 2 episodes before the year's over. So maybe I'll get a little more festive on the next one. But yeah, be good to one another, be good to yourselves, and stay warm.